Number 1. So, for some reason, my current cell phone number gets a strange amount of wrong number calls and texts. Most of them are fairly normal, but a handful really creep me out. Random number calls me. I ignore it, but then it calls again, so I think it might be something important and I better answer. As soon as I put the phone to my ear, some woman begins yelling and screaming at me. Keeps saying she's gonna get me for what I did. I try to explain to her that she's got the wrong number, but all she says is that, "I know what you did," before hanging up. Another time I got a random text that said something along the lines of, "The money will be in the tree when you're done with him." Number 2. I'm Irish. Grew up being scared of the banshee. I used to stay up until past midnight every night during the summer watching TV in our sitting room and doing whatever. One night, I hear 3 of the weirdest knocks on the front door. Immediately crap my pants and panic and then pull the sitting room window curtain to peek out. Not a sinner, nobody in sight. I turn everything off and run up to bed. Next day, my next door neighbor, who was my godmother and only 46 years old, is found dead of natural causes in her house. Realize that knock was dead man's knock, and feel guilty to this very day that her death was my fault. Number 3. Beat 10 to 11. Getting ready for bed. Took bath and sat in bed playing GoldenEye. Hear a loud crash next to left ear, but not from the game. Vision blurs and goes dark. Suddenly, blinding light in my face and silhouettes of people around me. Hear lady say, "He's waking up." Hear man say, "He's not ready yet." Sharp pain in arm. Instantly, I'm back in the bath. Number 4. I have quite a few weird stories. I moved a lot as a child, ultimately went to 5 high schools, and I can't even count how many primary schools. One time, though, we lived in a really creepy small town in Oregon. Generally, in small towns, there's a sense of community, often focusing around either the school or whatever their economy is based on, but this place was different. Parents never talked to each other. Anyways, here's one of many. Mom and Dad arguing. He's military, so he picks up orders to ditch us for a year. Goes off to Greece, leaving Mom alone with chair-bound grandfather and 3 boys. Mom sells insurance. A client takes an odd interest in her, often showing up at her work and giving her presents. Mom explains that she's married and that he needs to leave, but he becomes obsessed with her. For an entire year, this man stalks our family. Mom gets a restraining order, but it only goes so far. One night, for example, we can see him standing across the street at the graveyard. And yes, we lived literally across the street from one. He just stands there and stares at the house. Mom makes us all sleep in the living room together that night. Fast forward some more. Playing in backyard. I always notice a really big car at the church behind our house. And yes, there was a giant church behind our house. I always assumed it was some priest or something who lived there. Fast forward to the end of the year. Police discover that the car belongs to Mom's stalker. He was watching us from up there. I now realize that he may have been the man going for a walk every day when we walked to school. And this is how he knew that we were gone the night he broke into our house and threw my mom's lingerie all over the place. Number 5. Granddad told me about his great-uncle before he passed a few years ago. This isn't really paranormal, but the idea kind of stuck with me. It reminds me of some of the things that pop into my head from time to time, but I'd already be committed if I were crazy, I guess. Great-uncle was a pharmacist. Granddad remembered meeting him a few times when he was really young. Parents began sending them to their rooms when he stopped by, only once or twice, but he heard them arguing. He died before Granddad turned 10. Went to the funeral. Nothing real interesting happened there, but there was a closed casket. Years later, he asks his granddad about brother, great-uncle. Doesn't want to talk about it. He keeps pestering and gets smacked around. Still more years later, his granddad is on his last legs. Asks him again. Says stop pestering the dead and let him go in peace. His granddad dies. My granddad asks his dad what happened. Shortly after the wake, so he's in the mood to reminisce. Says his great-uncle helped support Granddad when he started his family. He was pretty normal, but got weirder and more distant over the years. Went to visit him once and his house was pretty much empty, but there was this makeshift shed that was boarded up behind it. Asked great-uncle about it, and he dodged the question and got really angry. They started fighting and they didn't see him for a while. Story kind of went around aimlessly at that point, so I'll cut it short. When he died, they asked around what was going on. And it turns out that basically, he thought people turned into demons after sundown and were trying to break into his house. He felt that his house was too big, so he made a shed to sleep in right in and would board up the windows every night to protect himself. One day, he wrote a note to his brother saying goodbye, that the demons were seeping in through the cracks like sludge. He smashed the door open and ran out, and then he went missing. A few days later, his body was found in the woods, eaten by wild dogs, or so they say, but otherwise abandoned. Hence, closed casket. It might have just been my granddad screwing with me, but I don't know. Miss you, Granddad. Number 6. Be-me. Severe alcohol withdrawals. Home alone. Laying on the couch and wanting to die. Some lady there that hasn't moved from under the blanket on the chair for hours. Not real. As long as I don't look at it, I'm fine. At the other end of the room, there's a door to the laundry room with like half the basement visible. Some kid or midget or something is blowing bouncy balls out of the shop vac silently. Okay, weird, but not real. Say out loud, I'm not cleaning that up. Little shit doesn't stop. Then, 2 of my friends' heads pop around the corner and pull back when I make eye contact. Become convinced they're actually there and playing a prank on me. Become convinced that a basement closet door actually leads to the outside when none of them do. Spend next couple hours in full panic mode searching the basement for exits and little people and what I now no longer believe were my friends. Call my mom freaking out and tell her to come pick me up because I don't know. She takes me to the hospital when I start seeing worms under my skin. Spent 4 days in the hospital because I could have died. It's terrifying to think that parts of your brain can just freak out and mess up what's real and what's not. Number 7. Be me, 11 years old, watching 8-year-old brother for the day. Single mom is off working. Figures I'm responsible enough to watch little bro now. Hot day in muggy Michigan weather. Little brother and I decided to go for a swim, despite Mom telling us not to go unless she's watching. Swim around in our 4-foot inflatable pool for a bit. Race, play games, that kind of shit. We're doing tricks off the ladder and grading each other on our jumps. His turn after I do a little half-assed flip off the ladder. Little brother goes underneath the ladder and starts kicking and splashing around erratically. Laugh, thinking he's joking around or doing a trick. Suddenly, his legs just stop moving and slowly float to the top. His head was stuck under the ladder. I laughed and stood by while my brother drowned. My mom took down the pool the day after it happened, but it's still sitting boxed up and deflated in our attic. It seems like it all happened so fast, but a little more common sense could have saved my brother that day. Forever guilty as hell. Shit still eats at me to this day. Number 8. I've posted this before, but I can do it again. It's a longish one. Be very young. My bedroom had a high bed, like a bunk bed, but with no bed at the bottom. Had to climb a ladder to get to bed. Shit was cool. If you opened the door and walked into the bedroom, you'd have the bed on the right with the window right in front of you as you walked in. I could never sleep with the landing light on. Always needed it to be pretty dark. If parents checked on me sleeping, they'd always close the door. Wake up one night. Door is ajar. Look down from my bed. This white hand pushes the door open. It was dark, but I could see the hand was clearly snow white. Slightly back down into my covers. A skinny, tall, fluorescent white thing walks into my room. And when I say skinny, I mean like prisoner of war skinny. It had no hair. I couldn't see any eyes or ears or anything. It looked naked, but otherwise featureless. It walks right past my bed and goes to the window. I lift my head up to look at it standing there. It turns around and looks right at me. It's just a white, featureless head and face, kind of like a mannequin. The pure white face then gets a black dot where the mouth would be. It got bigger and wider, and eventually it turned into a huge black mouth that went from one side of its face to the other. Grins at me. I scream my head off and hide under the covers. Light comes on and parents rush in, asking what's wrong. I look back at the window. Nothing's there. Tell parents, and they tell me I must have been dreaming and put me back to bed, and they go back to their room. Still awake, and I hear them talking and hear them say something. Did you leave his door open when you checked on him tonight?
I didn't check on him. The door was shut when I came to bed.
I still don't know if I was dreaming or what. But fuck me. I will never for the life of me forget that shit. This was in our old house. We moved since then, and I've moved out since that. Number 9. This happened when I was around 16. On a plane from Europe during a vacation. The sun sets during the flight, and there's dark skies before we land. Look outside the window. There's an unmoving, completely black rectangle. It kind of looks like a censorship bar. It must have been massive because the plane moves, but it doesn't seem to move at all. It's there for a few minutes before we finally pass it. Try to take a picture of it, but my shitty phone can't tell the difference in darkness between the bar and the sky. I know approximately the location it happened and when it happened, but I still have no explanation or theory as to what it was. It looked two-dimensional. exactly like a censorship bar. Incredibly strange. Number 10. I used to be friends with a girl who had just a dozen or so movies that she liked on a laptop, watching them over and over and over again. Many of them were popular films with significant portions edited out. She had a friend cut out all the scenes featuring any violence or sexuality, no matter how slight, with very few comedic exceptions. And she didn't even consider anyone's recommendations of other films, even if that friend would have edited them for her. She reasoned it was because she only ever watched those dozen or so films and wouldn't need more since she had the edited versions of them, and that she couldn't handle anything shocking unexpectedly. Needless to say, her other friends and I all found her strange and at times annoying to hang around with, but at least I can say she was by far the nicest and most honest person I've ever known. We called her Angel for reasons that should be obvious. On the evening of October 31st, 2016, our group of friends went to hang out at a park that got pretty spooky after dark. Angel lived alone in a nearby apartment complex, so when we started getting cold and decided to go indoors, we went with her. Her apartment was largely unfurnished, with the notable exception of the bedroom. The floor was entirely covered by mattresses, and there were dozens of pillows, blankets, and plushies scattered around. There were several comfy armchairs facing the TV, which sat on top of a stool at the back of the room in front of the window. Next to it was her laptop, connected to the TV. This is where she watched her few favorite movies, and it made many of us watch them more than once. That night, the friend who had originally edited those films to her liking managed to convince her that we should try to watch scary YouTube videos. We obviously stuck to fake ghost caught on tape ones, which at least outwardly didn't bother Angel, and she said it was because she didn't believe in ghosts. An hour or so of this later, and she was bored and wanted to put on Patch Adams. It was her all-time favorite film, with the edits, of course. She watched it practically daily. We had all seen it at least once before. Not the most exciting film on a Halloween night, but she couldn't be talked out of it. At this point, my best friend and his girlfriend left, but the rest of us stayed because we weren't planning on actually watching it. We'd just talk about ghosts or whatever. So she double-clicked on patchadams.mp4 and the film began. She was actually watching it, but she'd seen it 1,000 times, so she also talked over it about paranormal stuff with us. Her editor friend, though, seemed like he was having a hard time focusing on the conversation. After the part where Patch holds the skeleton and says, "I have a boner," suddenly it cut to the scene in Imprint where the girl hangs upside down with needles stuck in her gums. When she saw it, Angel screamed and backed up to the corner, hid under a blanket, and wailed in the most heartbreaking way I've ever had the displeasure of hearing. It was like she was mourning the death of a child or something. She just kept on crying and moaning no matter what was said. Even her editor friend apologized, saying that it was a prank and it was just a movie too, but I guess before we started watching YouTube videos, he'd replaced the Patch Adams file with a new edit that included screwed up scenes from horror movies. But already just that first one was too much for Angel. Me and another friend decided it wouldn't be a good idea to leave her alone, so we stayed the night. She stopped crying eventually, but in the morning we realized she'd pissed herself and was still shaking. We got her to drink some water, but she wouldn't say a word. Neither of us could stay, so we called her sister and told her what happened. Her reaction was like, "I'm coming, stay with her." Wouldn't explain why Angel was the way she was. The other friend left and I waited for her sister, trying to get her to at least look at me, but she just stared into emptiness. When her sister came, she rushed to Angel and held her. I awkwardly left because I was already late, and after work I called Angel's sister to ask if I could come by. She said it'd be good, but I should be extra careful. I shouldn't even talk about what happened because it'd only make her relive it. So I went there, and her sister explained quietly to me that Angel had witnessed a brutal assault and possibly a murder when she was 7 and had to hide in a dumpster. She stayed inside for hours in the pitch-black darkness and had to walk home at night. Anything too shocking sent her mind back to that dumpster. She'd never watched a horror movie in her life. That scene and imprint sent her way over the edge. As far as I know, she never returned to normal. Last I saw her, she still wouldn't speak more than short childlike sentences and was like a little kid. I wouldn't say she seemed unhappy, but being her friend was too hard when all she cared about were coloring books and plushies and talked to me like I was an older family friend or something rather than her friend. It was like her memories of her friends were just gone. Shortly after that Halloween night, her sister moved in to help her with her daily life. Her sister told me that she hasn't dared to watch Patch Adams after that. A prank ruined her favorite movie for her. Moral of the story: some people might have a reason why they can't handle horror films.